Do sit down. Those of you who've got seats. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to welcome you most warmly on behalf of friends, family, colleagues, supporters, even fans, to this special ceremony of remembrance for Shreela. And not forgetting all those who are watching online, of course. I want to welcome you on behalf of Marcus and myself and her 4 grandchildren, Jasmine, Alex, Hannah and Josh, and 6 grandkids, Stella, Jack, Joseph, Aria, Theo, and Elliot. There is, though, one person missing, and she loved a gathering. Even more, she loved a party. So that's how we will celebrate her life a little bit later. And thank you all for dressing in white, which is the Indian colour of mourning, or colour for celebration. Thank you. So now let's reflect here a little bit on Shreela, our mum, our friend, our colleague, our confidant, our guide, our inspirer, our provoker, and much more. She realized that her time was coming. It was tough for such a fun lover to find her mobility restricted in recent years. And I'm afraid she never really mastered Alexia or Siri. They remained aliens. She missed her visits to the Lords, and even more perhaps the tea rooms and the terraces. So in the words of Christina Rossetti, which we'll hear a bit later, read by Jasmine, she yearned to let go, and we're going to help her today. Yet I'm going to say that even in the final 2 weeks in hospital, she was, as ever, indomitable. She welcomed visitors, she shared tales, and she offered advice, of course, even telling the nurses off about their makeup. And invariably, she was right. But she also lavished them with thanks for all their great care. Now, Shreela described herself as a Hindu atheist, and we're going to try and deliver that complication today. Skepticism set in early after a devout childhood. Yet, in her 70s, you could find her reading the Gita. She was inspired to return to the scriptures. And she continued, and we have included a key passage of reading today. She absolutely loved the bagpipes. Thank you, William. Nothing more haunting, she used to say. She wasn't big on music, actually, but she did have her favourites, and Pandit Jasraj was her favoured Indian vocalist, and you will hear him sing an ode asking for the blessings of Ganesh, the elephant god, who is also known as a remover of obstacles. She specifically requested a prayer song, a chalisa, to Hanuman, the Indian monkey god, and you'll hear that. And she absolutely loved Indian flute music. Who didn't? And we'll come to that, and there's 1 or 2 other surprises as well. As a baby, she was given her name by the great poet and Nobel Prize winner Rabindranath Tagore. It literally means beautiful, and I think we can all accept that. Always elegantly turned out, always with a keen sense of colour, of fashion, of jewellery, her fabulous saris. So we had to include an extract to be read by Sir Michael Palin, one of her summer party gang. Now, as I said, one person is missing from today. but she's not. She is here. And she's here in spirit. So we spend this time in her company, remembering her.
Thank you, Paul. Shreela was a very, very good friend to myself and my late wife, Helen. And I think of her very, very fondly. Particularly, as Paul has said, the summer gatherings of which she presided, with Gary as well, a marvellous host. Can you hear me better now? Sorry about that. Shall I start again? No, I'll go. She was a marvellous host at the summer gatherings, got together a wonderful group of people that you'd only very often just meet at those gatherings. And she presided over it with wit and wisdom. And I can always remember she managed to get the sun to shine almost directly on Treveni every single year. 5 miles away it was cold and grey, but on Treveni the sun was always shining at her parties. So I will remember her very fondly for that. Also, she was extremely helpful to my family. My son, Will, she got him his very first job at working for her office in Parliament, and that started him off on what turned out to be quite a successful career so far. So I thank her for that too, for her help and also for her hospitality. She was a very charismatic lady. She had great strength and she had great energy. And I think that the poem which I'm going to read you now by Rabindranath Tagore typifies really the qualities that I think of when I think of dear Shreela. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country await.
Thank you. I wanted to share a picture of her early life in Lahore and some memories of her as a mum. Now, Shreela came from a well-to-do family. She was the great-granddaughter of the renowned philanthropist and engineer Sir Gangaram, who was called the father of Lahore. Her mother, Krishna Rai, was a devout Hindu who could spend several hours a day in prayer and rituals and kept a tight watch on her daughter. Her father, Aftab Rai, was urbane, outgoing and worldly, and he would go on to run Indian metal industries. It was an arranged marriage, but with differences. Her fondest early memories were of summer trips to Missouri, a hill station in the cooler North Indian foothills. Here she was allowed out with a trusty retainer to go to the library, even roller skating. But actually she would skive off to the movies. She loved those old black and white Hollywood movies, something her mother would have disapproved of. Hedy Lamarr was a favourite, and films remained a lifelong passion. So too reading, her private escape, even under the bedclothes with a torch. No wonder sci-fi was so favoured. And yes, I can vouchsafe that she was fully proficient in Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of how robots should behave. In 1947, the family was forced to flee to Delhi at partition. Her father, though, had anticipated trouble and whisked Shreela and her mum safely to America to stay with her older brother Shaukat, then at Harvard. Next, she found herself off to Rio. In 1948, after independence, her father was appointed senior Indian diplomat, ambassador to Brazil, and her devout mother declined to go. Shreela jumped at the chance, accompanied by a maiden aunt. Here, she ended up as a kind of junior chatelaine to the embassy, and arguably, this is where she honed her brilliant social and hosting skills. Out walking one day in Buenos Aires, where she attended the famous Northlands Girls' School, she was mobbed, wearing a beautiful sari, of course, with gold threads. Apparently, it was assumed that the threads were real gold. The story hit the press, and also the attention of one Eva Peron, the wife of the president. Shreela was quickly invited to tea to make up, and then became, as you imagine, a bit of a hit at the president's soirees. Returning to Delhi, school and life proved quite a dampener. She persuaded her father to allow her to study law at University College London. We're pleased that UCL is represented here. Again, she thrived. Again, she attracted attention, even getting married during her studies and having 2 sons, me and Marcus, while living between England, India, and Germany. After the marriage broke up, we moved to London for good, and she soon began her splendid, mutually supportive marriage with Gary, which lasted for more than 50 years. Thank you so much to Gary's family, so many of you being here with us today. Mixed marriages, of course, were rare in the 1960s, and this was an extremely brave move by both of them. Now, Shreela was quite a demanding mother. We had daily tasks, notionally an hour a day, as I recall. Not sure she had a timer, but she was pretty strict. Plus 2 hours extra gardening at the weekends. Yes, we did get rewarded from time to time with Green Shield stamp gifts, but only after we'd licked our way through bundles and bundles of them. You can still feel it. We learnt to make cakes, sew, knit, iron, and even crochet, sort out our kit, keep our rooms tidy, and make our own meals. It was feminism. And she encouraged us to be independent, even taking ourselves at rather young age out to museums and Saturday children's matinees. That was the film, Buff, encouraging her children. Shreela had taken up teaching. It was accessible, she was good at it, and it fitted around family life. When she and Gary moved to their lovely home at Treveni, it was really here that she began to find her life direction. Helping, supporting, guiding, all the many new arrivals, mainly then from the Punjab. She took up at Altwood Comprehensive School, and you'll hear later from Baldev Sidhu, a standout pupil of hers, whose family became very, very close friends. Shreela had the languages, she had the time, and she had the will, and she could advise on the lay of the land. She was able to go to airports, to hospitals, to law courts, to homes. Quickly, she was in demand for all her social skills. She started a Thursday club, a safe space, the only time when sheltered wives were actually allowed out of their homes. Those were different days than now. And encouraged by Gary and others, she became a JP, elected a councillor, then mayor, and so things progressed, and we'll hear more about that later. So, what will I miss? I'll miss her courage. An Indian divorcee with 2 small boys coming to England, making such a life. Picture that young girl reading Sci-Fi under the bedclothes in Lahore. And here we are today. She had no grand plan. She seized every day, making the most of things, not thrown off course by obstacles from racism or chauvinism or disability. And I think that is what she really taught Marcus and me. And I guess we've tried our best to follow. What will I miss? Her openness. She treated everyone with equal respect. She was as interested in waiters and doormen as much as peers, royalty and chairmen. Frankly, she just loved having people around, but not forgetting animals. She just loved her dogs too. Lively Inky, clever Gracie, loyal Mac, and latterly bouncy Rosie. And she absolutely loved her carers, whom she could laugh with and tease and still absolutely rely upon. So special thanks to all of them, to Alice, to Kashanda, above all to Bernadetta, and especially to Tracy. What will I miss? I'll miss her risk-taking, saying the unsayable. It's true that she loved nothing better than resting up, watching a movie even. But when switched on, with her energy, her skills, her presence, she could be electric. Just check the amazing range of affiliations and appointments in the memorial booklet that you have. I'll miss those impassioned debates. I'll even miss her sharp tongue. I'll miss her elaborate present wrapping. I'll miss her humour. And most of all, I'll miss her infectious laugh.
This is from Let Me Go by Christina Rossetti. When I come to the end of the road and the sun is set for me, I want no rights in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not for long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that once we shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all a part of the master plan, a step on the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends you know, laugh at all the things we used to do. Miss me, but let me go.
Baldev Sidhu will now share his tribute.
My warmest regards to the family and friends who have joined us today together in the spirit of Baroness Shreela Flather. My name is Baldev Sidhu. I'm here just as I am anywhere in the world. I owe that to a handful of people in my life, and Shreela was one of them. When she encountered me as a rough, prideful, confused 15 years old Punjabi boy, I was growing up around a time when survival had a different meaning in the streets of England. I still remember that day when teachers wanted to speak to my parents about me not fitting in school. As my parents couldn't understand English, she stepped up to personally meet them. She told the teachers she had to take responsibility for my behavior. From that day on, to which they said, Mrs. Flather, if you can control Baldev, we will gladly offer you a job at this school. And some might say I helped her find her first job. At that time, she would take me in, turn to me, and do what no one else had done. She took my thoughts seriously. She made me justify my actions. She listened to me, and she cared. She would say, why do you fight? What's the reason? I would tell her that some kids couldn't defend themselves at school against the English boys who were bullying colored kids, stopping them from using cafeteria, stopping them going into the bathrooms. That was the normal. I'm talking about 67, 68. I thought it was unfair seeing them scared, holding in their flus painfully for the whole day. To which she would say, well, if it's bullies you're up against, then keep fighting. When things didn't change much, that eventually led her to say, why are you still fighting? If you want to fight for something, then be educated about it, so you can start to win the bigger fight. I had so many questions. From that point, she started teaching me about the importance of moral principles and standing up for them against all odds. She would say, Baldev, you must have belief if you want success in your life. She taught me the power of instilling belief in myself and the people around me. Some people would go their whole life never getting to believe. When they cannot see it themselves, you reveal it to them and let them walk towards the belief in their own time. That same belief system allowed me to work towards a life full of joyous moments with Shreela and our wonderful sons. We would travel the world with Shreela. Her greatest joy would be making fun of us in every country at every possible moment. She had a unique way of showing you love that required you to walk on the sharp glass to get to her embrace eventually. And what a joy it was to do so. I used to think Disney's Jungle Book was a biography of me, based on me, as she would refer to me as a jungly. But that was her way. She would take society's ignorance at large and poke you with it, only to laugh at it with you, revealing how much they don't understand who you are, and more importantly, what you can truly be. Paul, Marcus, and having experienced various degrees of grief myself, ahead of you lies days of great memories and days that will feel heavy on the heart, to which one might ask, how can I make it less? How can I make it hurt less? When will the grief go away? I will say to you, the grief, like love, is wild, ferocious, and untamed force. It refuses to be ignored or contained and demands to be felt in its raw, unfiltered intensity. You have to honor it when it comes. For it's not the breaking heart that should concern you, but the one that stays indifferent amidst such painful times. Keep softening, keep loving, with your heads high, as your mother would when she walked into a room. Do what you must to stay connected to your heart at all times and to heart of Shreela. Having spent 55 years of my life knowing her, I cherish seeing her live the next 55 years and beyond in both of you. And if she has a problem with that, you can tell Shreela her jungly says so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baldev. We used to play that every Christmas, and it was when the family were happy together, and that was the reminder, and it became our sort of family Christmas music. Ben, over to you.
It's a very special honor to be here to celebrate and to send off the wonderful Baroness Shreela Flather. She was a force of nature. There are different ways of being a force of nature. Some people are whirlwinds, and some people are kind of flowers that make things happen in the world and in people's hearts and spirits. Shreela made things happen. She did so many things and somehow gave the impression of not doing so many things. She had a joyful spirit. She was provocative, as you've heard earlier. She had a sharp wit. She had great warmth. Gave the best parties. Her summer parties are legendary. I miss them. I miss her enormously. I miss her greatly. There are many things I'd like to share with you, but I'll just choose two things. I used to have lots of discussions with her, philosophical and foolish and witty and joyful discussions. And one that keeps coming back is a conversation we had once about the Bhagavad Gita. It was a favorite work. And she used to talk to me about the concept of Dharma. She used to talk about that moment when Vishnu was talking to Arjuna. Arjuna was having difficulties about getting to this war with his relations, his brothers on the other side. And Vishnu said, well, you have to do your responsibility. You have to do your duty. It is an impossible duty, but you have to do it. And I was struck by her. She kept coming back to this. The size of the difficulty, the terribleness of the duty, but you must do it. And I think it was exemplified in the memorial gates, which you can see at the back of that photograph, which I think is in many ways the visual masterpiece of her life, an enormously difficult thing to bring off, to celebrate the 1 million or so lives from the Commonwealth, people who gave their lives for us to be here, basically, and there'd been no formal celebration of them in London and in England, and she brought about the very first one. It was an epic struggle, and towards the end of it, she summoned me, because that's what she does, and said, Ben, you have to find words for the gates. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And she said, remember what Vishnu said. Difficult duty, but you have to do it. I tell you what moved me about that. It's the faith she had. She could have chosen words from Tagore, from Shakespeare, from Shoenka, from the great tradition of poetry across the world and across the Commonwealth. But she asked little young me. So I'm going to read from the poem that the words come from. But I just also want to say, I want to thank Shreela for bringing so many people into my life, for bringing all of us here together. I want to thank her for the way in which she brought the tremendous Indian spirit into Britain. I want to thank her for the fabulous achievement of her life, which she managed with a kind of grace and a kind of a smile, and that laughter, that famous laughter, and with food and jokes. She loved people. She loved gardens. She loved the House of Lords. She loved being cheeky. She loved pulling your leg. My leg is a foot longer because of her. And above all, she loved life. So I'm going to read this, which I hope celebrates one aspect of her life. Will you be at the harvest, among the gatherers, of new fruits. Then you must begin today to remake your mental and spiritual world and join the warriors and celebrants of freedom, realizers of great dreams. You can't remake the world without remaking yourself. Each era begins within. It is an inward event with unsuspected possibilities for inner liberation. We could use it to turn on our inward lights. We could use it to use even the dark and negative things positively. We could use the new era to clean our eyes, to see the world differently, to see ourselves more clearly. Only free people can make a free world. Infect the world with your light. Help fulfill the golden prophecies. Press forward the human genius. Our future is greater than our past.
Thank you, Ben. We're going to hear now from Freddie Earl Howe, perhaps Shreela's closest pal in the House of Lords. A place, as we heard, she felt so at home with. She had felt rather nervous going into the house. And in the end, she said it was the most welcoming of all the institutions that she was involved in Britain. Over to you, Freddie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My first meeting with Shreela took place in the House of Lords in 1990, shortly after her introduction there. I had just made my maiden speech, and she was kind enough to give me encouragement, after which we soon became firm friends. It was obvious to me straight away how genuinely Shreela felt the privilege of being a member of the upper house, and how delighted she was to find herself amongst a group of people who made her feel welcome and who treated her from the outset as an equal. Never before had the chamber of the House of Lords witnessed a woman in a sari. And with her natural approachability, Shreela soon became someone whom people wanted to meet and to know. She, in turn, swiftly warmed to her fellow peers, finding them stimulating company, especially the hereditary peers, whom she regarded as the embodiment of old-fashioned British values and manners. People's values and their standards, the standards of behaviour, mattered increasingly to Shreela in a world where she saw those things being gradually eroded or otherwise changing for the worse. As the first ever Asian female peer, Shreela soon made the most of her unique status in the House, enriching its debates with insights gained from her Indian heritage and experience. And then one day, in 1996, she had an inspired idea, which was to organise a group visit to India, coinciding with the celebrations to mark the country's 50th anniversary of independence, planned for the following year. The group would consist solely of hereditary peers, who were the descendants of former viceroys of India. 7 or 8 members of the nobility, plus wives and partners, including Lord Ridley, Lord Elgin, Countess Mountbatten, the Earl of Lytton, Lord Lawrence, the Marquis of Reading, and Lady Darcy de Nath, duly signed up. Lord Lytton, who is here today, remembers the expedition with enormous pleasure. Shreela took delight in shepherding the illustrious party to a succession of receptions, official meetings, and dinners where they were treated like royalty. To her great amusement, a collective noun in Urdu was settled upon for the group. The word Lat Sahib, which means firstly Governor General and secondly, one who swaggers. The next year, back at home, things took a less happy turn. In 1998, Tony Blair's government introduced the House of Lords Bill to remove all the hereditary peers from the upper house. Lord Cranborne, the Conservative leader in the Lords, did a secret deal with Number 10 to ensure that 92 hereditaries of all parties and of none would, after all, be allowed to stay behind. William Hague, the leader of the opposition, promptly sacked him. Shreela was so upset at Cranborne's removal that she resigned the Conservative Party whip. With some cajoling, she was persuaded to change her mind. But she was sad and would say dejectedly that her friends on the Conservative benches had all gone. At the same time, ever since her elevation to the peerage, Shreela had harboured an expectation that the Conservative leadership would want to use her experience by appointing her to a public position. But no such call had ever come. The disappointment weighed on her, and in 2008, she decided to resign the Conservative whip for good and move to the politically neutral status of the crossbenches. In retrospect, I think this move was a good thing for Shreela. For one thing, it left her freer to say what she wanted without looking over her shoulder. And it also enabled her to take up a role that might never have come her way, which was to chair the committee responsible for the funding and construction of the memorial gates on Constitution Hill, dedicated to the memory of soldiers from the British Empire and the colonies who gave their lives in 2 world wars. I know of no one who regards these gates as anything other than a triumph. And I would personally view them, as I think Shreela did herself, as the greatest achievement of her life. She always modestly insisted that the success of the project was down to many others, not only her. But she would nevertheless acknowledge that without her, the initiative would never have got off the ground. Shreela was a person who did not beat about the bush. When she needed to make a point, she would shoot from the hip. But being direct with people was Shreela's way. She saw no point in being anything else. When she spoke in the House, she would typically give it to their lordships with both barrels. As a result, listening to Shreela, depending on the subject, could be something of a white-knuckle ride. Let her loose on a topic such as political correctness, and you might find yourself holding on to your seat. How ridiculous and stupid is that, is a phrase one often heard. Shreela's approach to life and to politics was always good-humoured, but there were numerous issues which she took very seriously, and 2 in particular which she championed in the last decade of her life. One was a cause that sprang directly from some difficult and upsetting experiences when out with Gary, which was disabled access to public spaces such as theatres and restaurants. The other was much bigger, and perhaps an abiding concern of her life, which was the empowerment of women. In a Lord's debate almost exactly 10 years ago, she began her speech by saying, "These days, I do not cry very much because I am quite a happy person. The only thing that makes me tearful is thinking about the nearly 1 billion women in India and Africa whose lives are beyond imagination." Shreela was passionate about the things that she knew would improve those lives, chief among them education, paid work, and access to family planning. Of these, education she saw as the key, and in the Lords she lost no opportunity of driving these important messages home. Shreela was the warmest and kindest of friends, and to be in her company was to guarantee a great deal of laughter. She had little time for people who took themselves too seriously. My wife and I visited her and Gary in Maidenhead quite frequently, and from time to time in London, she and I would have a cheerful gossip at one of her favourite Indian restaurants. Shreela never let her ennobled position affect her dealings with others, but she used it effectively. And in standing up for the disadvantaged, the dispossessed, the unfairly treated, and those who in one way or another are victims of oppression, she was speaking the language that most of us want to hear, which is the language of justice. In a debate on justice some years ago, she ended her speech with a little story. She said, "I had the great good fortune to have as a friend the mother of the distinguished judge, Lord Phillips of Worth-Matravers. One state opening day, I came into the chamber very near where all the judges were sitting. First, an old friend, the noble and learned Lord Wolfe, got up to greet me. And then the noble and learned Lord Phillips. By the time I got to a seat, one of the peers said to me, 'We thought maybe all the judges were going to stand up to greet you.' Well, indeed, I personally believe that they would have been proud to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. Prag will now play an extract from Rag Bhupali, which is an evening rag said to be played by Lord Krishna to his lover Radha before her separation, or before their separation. Thank you, Marcus.
So, welcome everybody. It's an emotional event for Paul and myself, but to share it with yourselves and have your support is truly amazing. And to hear such wonderful tributes, very moving, very appropriate, and just to remember many of the wonderful insights from our mother it's still inspirational. I don't know whether Paul wanted to give some background on the Bhagavad Gita. Any got it? Thy tears are for those beyond tears, and are thy words, words of wisdom. The wise grieve not for those who live, and they grieve not for those who die. For life and death shall pass away. Because we all have been for all time, I and thou and those kings of men, and we all shall be for all time, we all, forever and ever. As the spirit of our mortal body wanders on in childhood and youth and old age, the spirit wanders on to a new body. Of this, the sage has no doubts. From the world of the senses, Arjuna, comes heat and comes cold, and pleasure and pain. They come and they go, they are transient. Arise above them, strong soul. The man whom these cannot move, whose soul is one, beyond pleasure and pain, is worthy of life in eternity. The unreal never is. The real never is not. This truth, indeed, has been seen by those who can see the true. And we dedicate that to our mother Shreela. Thank you.
Now we come to the point where we must bid farewell to Shreela. Before we do, I was going to suggest that if you want to support her legacy, we have offered you the Memorial Gates Educational Priority Work Fund, which has just been established. And you can, if you wish to donate through the A.B. Walker website. And I think a Just Giving website is being established. And there will be a bucket outside or a container if you wish. And we'll give full thanks to everybody who's been involved in today. But just want to acknowledge here, as Shreela would want us to, all those involved from the funeral directors and the crematorium. Before we do say our goodbye, I one extra message to share with you. We received a special message from His Majesty the King, and he kindly agreed that we are able to share that with you and read it out. And that's what I would like to do now. So this is from King Charles. Dear Paul, dear Marcus, I particularly wanted to write to say how terribly sorry I was to hear of the recent death of your dear mother, Baroness Flather, and to send you and your family my deepest sympathy at such a very sad time for all of you. I know that your mother was a person of great integrity, who through her extensive experience and unwavering dedication in public service improved the life of so many people. I remember with particular fondness and admiration, she never took no for an answer. And I thought that made it so personal. She never took no for an answer. The work that she undertook for the Memorial Gates Trust, of which I am proud to serve as a patron. The gates now stand as a lasting tribute to the fallen soldiers that they honour, and are one of many examples of the enduring impact that your mother had on the lives of people across the United Kingdom and around the world. I hope this brings you joy and comfort to know that while the loss of your beloved mother will be greatly felt by those whose lives she touched, her legacy will continue to act as a source of inspiration to many. You and your families are very much in our thoughts and prayers at this moment as we mourn her great loss. Yours most sincerely, Charles R. We've got an extra surprise as well. We have now a piece of music that Rosario is going to perform for us. Thank you. Patricia Rosario is a professor of music at the Royal College of Music. And she met Shreela at a concert, and I could say that Shreela probably picked you up, as she did so many of us. She was rather good at that. And they became firm friends with India as a connection and with music. And Patricia's now going to sing the Panis Angelicus, which is by César Franck. And she's going to be accompanied by her husband, Mark. Thank you.
Oh
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia. So, Mum, in your amazing, fascinating, successful life journey, so warmly shared this afternoon in tributes and in music, we now say our goodbyes. It's not the end, really, because we won't forget her, and we can all take our own memories of her with us. That infectious laugh, or that mischievous twinkle, or that readiness to challenge, or that drive to take risks, or that teasing nature that Baldev spoke so warmly about. We can see from your roots in the Indian subcontinent, just how much you have contributed here in shaping our new, many-cultured, multi-faith Britain. Thank you for leaving each of us, family, friends, colleagues, partners, co-workers, and our communities inspired and enhanced. She would say there's still work to do, we know that, but she showed us the way. Now, as you leave the chapel, do feel free to walk up to the coffin to pay any final respects. And then we'll go out through this door on my right into the garden. And you're all warmly invited to the nearby hotel. And it's suggested that you use the back route. Apparently it's shorter. So that is out of the gates, turn left, and then left again, past the golf course, and then right. It should take you about 5 minutes. And we're going to re-celebrate her life in the party that she always loved. To close, before William plays us out in tribute from the bagpipes that she so loved, I think I'm going to ask you all to join me in saying goodbye. We didn't think hymns were appropriate. We knew hymns weren't appropriate, but I think this is a way that we can do something together. And I want to do it in Hindi. And I want it to be heard outside this room. So what I want you all to do, listen up. I'm bossy too, you see. On the count of 3, we will say Ram Ram, which means goodbye in Hindi. Ram Ram. Ram Ram Shreela Ji. Ji is the Indian term of respect and endearment. Okay? Everybody with me? I think we'll stand. Let's stand. Let's look at the coffin. 1, 2, 3. Ram Ram Shreela Ji. Excellent. Let's do it once more. Make it even louder. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ram Ram Shreela Ji. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Please, we'll go from the front, but please do pay your respects. Marcus and I will start off, and then we'll be outside.
Yes.